The marble floors of the Massachusetts Superior Court echoed beneath Claire Whitmore's heels as she walked down the long, silent hallway. Every step felt heavier than the last, as if the building itself remembered every lie ever told inside its walls. Her dark suit was simple, deliberate, no jewelry, no flash, just the quiet authority of someone who knew the system better than anyone in the room. At the plaintiff's table sat Lydia Hayes, Claire's mother, perfectly composed in a black blazer and pearls. Her expression carried that familiar blend of superiority and disdain, the same look she had worn the last time Claire saw her 15 years ago at a funeral. Next to her sat Raymond Hayes, her father, grayer now, still silent, still complicit. When Claire entered, Lydia rolled her eyes, not a subtle gesture, but the exaggerated kind meant to remind everyone who the victim was supposed to be. Claire didn't react. She never did. Judge Alan Pierce adjusted his glasses as he flipped through the case file. Case number 22479, he began. Hayes versus Whitmore. His voice filled the room until it suddenly stopped. He looked up, really looked, and his hand froze mid-air. Wait, he said, blinking once. Claire Whitmore, you're the prosecutor with the district attorney's office, aren't you? A slow breath left Claire's chest. Not today. Your Honor, she said evenly. Today. I'm the defendant. A quiet stir rippled through the courtroom. The bailiff's pen paused above his notepad. Lydia's lawyer leaned forward, whispering urgently, but Lydia kept her gaze fixed on her daughter, half shock, half fury. Judge Pierce hesitated, recognition dawning. He had once clerked for Samuel Whitmore, Claire's grandfather. Decades ago. The realization softened his tone. Well, he murmured, that explains the surname. Claire's jaw tightened. Yes, sir. It does. Inside. Her heartbeat was steady but sharp, pulsing with years of unspoken history. She could feel her mother's stare slicing through her like glass. To Lydia, this courtroom was theater. To Claire, it was home turf, the one place where truth still mattered. The irony wasn't lost on her. For 10 years she had stood behind the prosecution's table, sending fraudsters, embezzlers, and manipulators to prison, people who lied, exploited, and destroyed others for their own gain, people who looked a lot like her parents, and now here they were, suing her for everything her grandfather had built: his home, his legacy, his name. Judge Pierce cleared his throat. Before we begin, both parties should know I once worked under Judge Samuel Whitmore. If either side objects to my presiding, speak now, Lydia's attorney whispered again. Nervous. Lydia shook her head. No objection. Your Honor, she said smoothly. Claire almost smiled. Big mistake, she thought. As the gavel struck, the sound carried through the room like thunder. Claire's hands tightened on the table's edge, grounding herself. Her mind whispered one truth she never spoke aloud. They think I'm still the girl they abandoned. They have no idea who I've become. And for the first time in her life, she was ready to show them. The story drifts backward 30 years, carried by the echo of the judge's gavel into a soft October morning in 1992. Lydia Hayes is only 19, radiant and restless, her beauty the kind that blooms on magazine covers and dies in real life. She stands in front of the mirror of a small Newton apartment, lipstick perfect, impatience burning in her eyes. Beside her, Raymond Hayes, 22, still wearing his Boston hockey jacket, flips through unpaid bills and an unopened letter from the Bruins, the one that says release. Neither looks at the crib in the corner. The baby inside whimpers once and falls silent. By noon, Lydia and Raymond drive to Brooklyn, their car trunk packed with dreams and excuses. The Whitmore brownstone looks warm and alive, the smell of cinnamon and sugar drifting from the kitchen. Margaret Maggie Whitmore, silver-haired and gentle, opens the door wearing a flower-streaked apron. Behind her stands Judge Samuel Whitmore, tall and precise, still in his court robes. When Lydia says, "Just for a few months," Samuel studies her face for a long moment. He knows better, but says nothing. The door closes, and that's the last time the baby sees her parents for a long while. Years blend together in the rhythm of Maggie's kitchen, the wooden stool, the mixing bowl too big for small hands, the smell of melted chocolate chips. Claire learns that love is not spoken loudly, it's baked, stirred, and served warm. Samuel listens to her every childish story with the same attention he gives a courtroom argument. Justice, he tells her, starts with paying attention. When other children talk about soccer games and bedtime stories, Claire pretends she understands. She draws pictures of two parents standing behind her, smiling faces she doesn't quite remember. Maggie notices, but never corrects her. Instead, she adds extra chocolate chips and says softly, "The best cookies have extra love." Once a year, Lydia returns, each time dressed more elegantly than the last, perfume sharp. Phone in hand, she kisses the air near Claire's cheek, calls her sweetheart, and spends most of the visit scrolling through her messages. Outside, Raymond waits in the car, engine running. Samuel's patience is quiet but not blind. After each visit, he slips another check into an envelope, $3,000 every month, sent to Lydia with a note that simply says, "Take care of yourself." Claire never sees the envelopes, but she feels the absence. She knows, even as a child, that something sacred is missing. Yet, when Maggie and Samuel tuck her into bed each night, the space between what she lost and what she gained doesn't feel quite so large. That night, Maggie hums a lullaby and whispers, "Family isn't about who leaves, my love. It's about who stays." It happens on Thanksgiving weekend, the air sharp with cold and cinnamon. The Whitmore garden glows faintly under a gray Brooklyn sky, rows of empty flower beds waiting for spring. Margaret Maggie Whitmore kneels in her old gardening sweater, pressing tulip bulbs into the soil. She hums under her breath, the same tune she's sung since Claire was small. Inside the kitchen, a pot of cider simmers. Claire, now 18, home from her first semester at Boston University, leans against the doorway watching her grandmother work. "Come help me with the last row," Maggie calls. Claire laughs, tugs on gloves, and steps into the chill. They talk about college, about professors and dorm life, about how Samuel still insists on reading the newspaper cover to cover every morning. It feels safe, ordinary, until Maggie's laughter fades mid-sentence. Her hand trembles, the trowel slips, and she crumples into the soil. Claire screams for help. Samuel rushes from the house. But it's too late. Maggie's head rests against the earth, her fingers still clutching a tulip bulb. The ambulance lights paint the white fence red and blue. By the time Claire realizes what's happening, her grandmother is gone. That night, the house feels wrong, too large, too quiet. Claire sits in the dark kitchen, her hands covered in dirt, staring at the bowl of cookie dough they never finished. Samuel joins her silently, holding Maggie's gardening gloves. They don't speak for hours. At the funeral, Lydia arrives in a sleek black coat and dark glasses. Raymond stays near the door, avoiding Samuel's eyes. They leave before the reception, citing travel plans. Claire watches the car disappear and feels something inside her harden. After the guests go home, she walks into the garden, kneels in the cold soil, and plants the remaining tulip bulbs one by one. When she finishes, she whispers, "I'll make sure they bloom for you." The wind rustles through the bare branches, carrying the faintest scent of cinnamon. For the first time, Claire understands what loss really means and what kind of love never leaves. The first Sunday after Maggie's funeral feels unbearable. The house still smells like her lavender soap and baked apples, but without her laughter. Every room echoes. Judge Samuel Whitmore moves slower now. Careful steps, deliberate motions. Claire hovers near the doorway, unsure how to fill the silence. He sets 2 plates on the table, pours cider instead of wine, and says quietly, "We'll keep dinner." She'd want that. That night becomes the start of their ritual. Every Sunday, no matter the weather, they cook together. Sometimes it's Maggie's pot roast. Sometimes takeout pizza when exams keep Claire late. The point isn't the meal, it's the presence. They talk about everything law, life, loss. Samuel teaches her what he never taught his students in court, that justice isn't about punishment. It's about responsibility. Power means nothing, he tells her. If you don't know when to put it down. Claire listens, takes notes in a small blue journal, the one Maggie once used for recipes. Over time, the pages fill with quotes, not ingredients. Samuel watches her grow sharper, stronger, more certain of who she is. He sees Maggie in her the kindness, the stubbornness, the way she can steady a room just by speaking softly. When Claire gets accepted to Boston University Law School, Samuel sits front row at graduation, his camcorder shaking slightly as he films her speech. Lydia sends a text message that reads only, "Proud of you." Claire doesn't reply. That summer, she moves into a small Boston apartment, keeps the Sunday dinners, and calls Samuel every night just to say she made it home. Years pass in the rhythm of ambition. Claire becomes an assistant prosecutor, the youngest in her division. The work consumes her, but she thrives on purpose. Samuel never complains when she misses dinner once or twice, though his voice softens when she apologizes. "Just this once," he says, and she promises it won't happen again. But one Friday in late autumn, she calls to cancel too many files, too little time. He laughs gently, says, "Go win your case. I'll save you dessert." She smiles, hangs up, and doesn't realize it's the last thing he'll ever say to her. A week later, Samuel dies peacefully in his sleep. When Claire arrives at the house, his plate is still on the table. Half a slice of pie waiting beside an untouched cup of tea. The chair across from his is empty. The silence feels like judgment and love all at once. The week after Samuel's funeral moves like fog, slow, heavy, impossible to hold. Claire spends her days sorting through papers, the smell of old books and cedar lingering in every drawer. His handwriting is everywhere neat, deliberate, the same looping cursive that once filled Maggie's recipe cards. When the attorney calls to schedule the will reading, Claire expects sentiment, not substance. She imagines a keepsake watch, perhaps a framed photo. Nothing more. The law office sits on State Street, overlooking the harbor. The same skyline Samuel once pointed to and said, "Every law written in this city began with a promise someone didn't keep." Claire arrives early, dressed in black again, her grief folded neatly beneath her composure. Lydia and Raymond walk in 10 minutes late, whispering about parking. Lydia's perfume arrives before her apology. Attorney Lewis opens a leather folder, his tone neutral. Judge Whitmore's estate totals approximately $3 million. Per his wishes, all assets, property, investments, insurance transfer solely to his granddaughter, Claire Whitmore. The words hang in the air. Lydia blinks as if she misheard. Raymond shifts uncomfortably, eyes flicking toward his wife. Claire feels her breath catch. The attorney slides a sealed envelope across the table. "He wanted you to have this," he says. Inside is a letter, the paper thick and ivory-colored, the ink slightly faded. "My dearest Claire," it begins. "You earned this not through blood, but through presence, through showing up, through loving me and your grandmother when others could not be bothered." Her throat tightens. By the time she reaches the end, keep the house, keep the Sundays, keep choosing love over absence. The tears come quietly, without permission. Then the attorney opens a second envelope. "He also asked me to show you this. Bank statements. 2 decades of transfers, $3,000 each month to Lydia Hayes. Over $800,000 in total. Emails from Lydia requesting more. Texts canceling visits. Letters from Raymond asking for business loans that were never repaid. Your grandfather anticipated they might contest this." The attorney says softly, "He wanted you armed with proof." Claire folds the papers, her hands trembling, not with fear but clarity. For the first time, she understands that Samuel's last lesson wasn't about law. It was about truth, the kind that doesn't need a courtroom to stand. 30 days after the will reading, the lawsuit arrives like a storm. Thick envelopes stamped with legal insignias land on Claire's doorstep, followed by the dull knock of a process server who won't meet her eyes. Lydia and Raymond Hayes, plaintiffs. Allegation undue influence. Claim their daughter manipulated an elderly man into rewriting his will. The words are clinical, but the betrayal burns hot and personal. Claire reads it twice, then a third time, until the letters blur. She calls her attorney, Evan Rhodes, the same colleague who once told her she argued like a storm wrapped in silk. "They think this will scare you," he says. "They don't know who they're suing." Claire's voice is steady. "Oh, they know. They just don't believe I'll fight back." When the hearing begins, the courtroom feels smaller than before, crowded with whispers and camera flashes. Lydia arrives in a black dress, her hair swept into a perfect chignon, her expression fragile enough to fool a stranger. She sits beside Raymond, who avoids eye contact with everyone. Her attorney, Martin Keller, polished and performative, addresses the court with theatrical sincerity. "My client, Mrs. Hayes, is a devoted daughter," he begins, pacing before the jury box. She was cruelly cut off by manipulation and deceit, separated from her father by those who sought control over his estate. Lydia dabs at imaginary tears with a white tissue. Claire watches in silence. Every word feels like acid on old wounds. She wonders if Lydia believes her own story or if she's simply performing the only role she's ever known the victim. When it's Evan's turn, he doesn't posture. He simply stands and says, "This case isn't about greed. It's about presence, about who showed up when it mattered." His tone is calm, but his evidence speaks louder. He calls witnesses Samuel's housekeeper, his neighbor, a retired judge who confirms Samuel was sharp, deliberate, and fully aware of his decisions. Then come the records, the $800,000 in payments, the canceled visits, the unanswered letters. Each piece lands like a stone dropped into still water. Lydia's expression tightens, her voice rising under cross-examination. "He was lonely," she insists. "He wanted me there," Evan replies gently. Then, "Why didn't you go?" Silence answers louder than any witness could. By the day's end, the narrative has shifted. The jury no longer sees a grieving daughter. They see distance, absence, a pattern of taking without giving back. As the judge adjourns, Lydia refuses to look at Claire. Raymond trails behind her, small and uncertain. Claire gathers her notes, her breath slow but steady. The fight has only begun. But the truth, like her grandfather's handwriting, feels permanent, unshakable, and finally hers. The second week of trial opens beneath a rainstorm that pounds against the courthouse windows. Reporters gather outside, microphones glinting under umbrellas. Inside, the air is heavy with perfume, paper, and quiet judgment. Claire Whitmore sits behind the defense table, calm on the surface but pulsing with restrained fury underneath. She spent her career in this building standing behind the prosecution's bench, demanding truth from strangers. But today, she's the one under oath. Judge Alan Pierce calls the room to order. His voice carries the weight of respect. He once worked for Samuel Whitmore, and everyone knows it. "Let's proceed," he says. Lydia's attorney, Martin Keller, stands first, polishing his glasses as if preparing for battle. "Mrs. Hayes," he begins, "please describe your relationship with your father." Lydia folds her hands neatly, her voice trembling in practiced sorrow. "He was my world," she says. "He loved me. But after my mother passed, he changed. Claire." She turned him against me. Keller glances toward the jury, letting her words hang in the air. "And you believe Ms. Whitmore influenced him?" Lydia nods, lowering her eyes. She was always manipulative, always competing for attention. "My father adored her," but she wanted everything. Evan Rhodes rises slowly. May I? Your Honor, Judge Pierce nods. Evan steps forward. Mrs. Hayes, do you recall the monthly transfers from your father's account, $3,000 each? For over 20 years, Lydia stiffens. He offered that money. She insists. He wanted to help. Evan's tone stays calm. And in those 20 years, how many times did you visit him? Lydia's lips tighten. I don't recall. 8 times. Evan replies. That's less than once a year, and your last visit before his death. His 84th birthday, Lydia whispers. Evan's voice softens. You stayed 90 minutes, left before the cake. Is that correct? Lydia's eyes flash with anger. I was busy. I had a life. Evan lets the words echo. Yes, you did. He turns to the jury, but so did he, and she was part of it. Raymond takes the stand next, but his testimony crumbles under the weight of photographs Claire's graduations, law school ceremonies, Sunday dinners, all featuring Samuel front and center, proud and smiling. In every photo, one thing is missing, Lydia and Raymond. When the time comes for the defense, Evan rises again. The defense calls Claire Whitmore. The room stills. Claire walks to the stand, swears the oath, and sits. The wood of the chair feels cold beneath her hands. Evan begins gently. Ms. Whitmore, tell us about your grandfather. Claire takes a breath. He was my home, she says simply. He taught me that justice isn't punishment, it's presence. It's showing up, even when it's hard. Evan nods. Did you ever ask for his money? No, she says. I only asked for his time. A hush falls. Evan glances toward the judge. Nothing further. But Keller isn't finished. He steps closer, voice sharp. You're a prosecutor, Ms. Whitmore. You know influence when you see it. Isn't it true you used your relationship to secure his estate? Claire leans forward, her eyes steady. If inheritance was my goal, I wasted a lot of time. I could have been building my own fortune instead of having dinner with an old man every Sunday. Her tone breaks slightly. But I chose him because he chose me. Because love isn't measured in bank statements, it's measured in showing up. The courtroom is silent except for the soft tick of the clock. Keller retreats. Even Judge Pierce looks moved. After deliberation, the verdict comes swift and clean. The court finds that Judge Samuel Whitmore's will reflects his true intentions. No undue influence. No incompetence. The estate stands as written. He pauses, eyes on Lydia. Furthermore, the court awards attorney's fees to the defendant. This case was brought without merit. The gavel strikes. Lydia gasps softly. Raymond lowers his head. Claire exhales for the first time in days. As the crowd murmurs, she looks up at the portrait of her grandfather hanging in the hallway, Samuel in his robe. Dignified. Alive in memory. For the first time since his death, she feels peace, not pain. Justice hasn't just been served, it's been restored. When she leaves the courtroom, the rain has stopped. The city glows under thin light, and Claire realizes that sometimes the truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to stand its ground and wait to be heard. The courthouse steps glisten under the fading rain. Claire descends slowly, her heels clicking against the wet stone, each sound echoing through the quiet crowd. Reporters shout her name, cameras flash, but she doesn't look up. The verdict still hums in her ears, a strange blend of justice and exhaustion. She's won, but the victory feels heavy, like a truth too long buried finally unearthed. Behind her, the doors open. Lydia's voice cuts through the noise. Claire, please wait. Claire stops, her body tense but composed. Lydia rushes forward, makeup streaked, hands trembling. I just want to talk. She pleads. You're still my daughter. Claire turns slowly. Her eyes are steady, not cold, just resolute. No, Lydia, she says softly, you're the woman who gave birth to me. My mother was Margaret Whitmore. Lydia flinches at the name, the sound of it like a verdict she can't appeal. She reaches out, but Claire steps back. You had 30 years to show up, Claire continues. You chose not to. That's not something I can forget. Tears spill down Lydia's face, streaking mascara across her cheeks. Raymond stands behind her, silent, smaller than ever. The reporters lower their cameras. The scene feels too private to capture. Claire adjusts her coat, lifts her chin, and for the first time in years, her shoulders relax. Goodbye, Lydia, she says, her tone final yet almost gentle. I hope someday you understand what you traded for pride. Then she walks away, the crowd parting as she passes. The sky above clears into pale gold, the same color as the tulips her grandmother once planted. Behind her, Lydia's sobs echo through the steps, swallowed by the city's hum. For Claire, the silence that follows isn't empty, it's freedom. 3 years pass before the letter arrives. It comes on a quiet March morning, slipped between bills and court notices. The handwriting elegant but unfamiliar. Claire recognizes it before she opens it, the same looping script from childhood birthday cards signed Love, Mom. For a long moment she simply stares, debating whether to read it. Then, slowly, she unfolds the pages. Claire. It begins. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know why. Lydia's words spill across the paper confessions wrapped in regret. She writes of envy, of always feeling compared to Margaret Whitmore, of believing she could never live up to the grace her mother embodied. You reminded me of her, she admits. That's why I stayed away. I thought distance would protect me from feeling small. I was wrong. By the second page, Lydia's tone softens. If you ever find room in your heart to forgive me, plant tulips for both of us. Claire lowers the letter, the ink already smudged by her tears. The words ache, not because they excuse anything, but because they reveal how fragile the people who hurt her truly were. Weeks later, she visits the cemetery at dusk. The marble headstones of Samuel and Margaret catch the last light of day. She kneels in the cold soil, pressing tulip bulbs into the ground one by one, the same way Maggie once taught her. The earth smells familiar, home and memory intertwined. When she finishes, she whispers, I forgive you, but I won't forget who showed up. The wind stirs the leaves, carrying her words upward, soft and certain. She stands, brushes the dirt from her hands, and for the first time in years, the garden feels whole again. 20 years later, the city of Boston gleams beneath a crisp autumn sky. A bronze plaque is unveiled outside the newly renamed Samuel Whitmore Justice Center, the crowd rising to its feet as Judge Claire Whitmore, now gray-haired, poised, and serene steps to the podium. Cameras flash, but her gaze drifts past them toward the courthouse steps, where her grandfather once stood after every trial, straight-backed and proud. She speaks softly, her voice steady. My grandfather believed justice wasn't punishment, it was responsibility. He taught me that family is the same. It's the people who show up, even when it's hard. The audience listens, some wiping tears, others nodding quietly. After the ceremony, Claire lingers alone in the courtyard. Rows of tulips bloom around the marble walkway, crimson and gold, the same colors Maggie once planted. The scent of earth and rain fills the air. She runs her fingers across the engraved words on the plaque. Justice can wait. Family can't. A young law clerk approaches, nervous, holding a stack of files. Judge Whitmore, she says, I've read all your cases. You've changed so many lives. Claire smiles gently, then keep changing them. That's how legacy works. As the clerk walks away, Claire looks up at the fading light. The wind carries the faintest echo of her grandmother's laughter, the warmth of her grandfather's voice, the peace of knowing she kept their promise. The tulips sway in the breeze, alive with color and memory. And for Claire Whitmore, justice and love have finally become the same thing.